My mill faked a heart attack at our wedding to stop it, and my spineless husband let her ruin everything by choosing her over me. I knew Patricia hated me, but I didn't realize the sheer scale of her theatrics until I was standing at the altar, my bouquet trembling in my hands, watching her convulse on the floor of the church aisle in a performance that would have put Meryl Streep to shame. We hadn't even gotten to the vows yet. The priest was mid-sentence when a strangled cry echoed through the silent sanctuary, followed by the sound of expensive silk hitting stone. There she was, my soon-to-be mother-in-law, clutching her chest, gasping for air like a fish on a dock, her eyes rolling back in her head. My fiancé, David, didn't even look at me. He dropped my hand as if it were made of burning coals and sprinted down the steps, practically vaulting over the flower arrangements to get to her. Mom? Mom? Oh God, somebody call 911. Her heart. It's her heart. He was screaming, his voice cracking like a terrified teenager's. He was cradling her head, crying openly, completely oblivious to the 300 guests staring in horrified silence, oblivious to the fact that he was leaving his bride standing alone at the altar. I just stood there, frozen. Part of me was terrified that she was actually dying, but a colder, cynical part of me remembered the last 6 months. Patricia had made it abundantly clear that if David married me, he was out of the will. She controlled the family trust, the real estate, everything his father had left behind, and she dangled that inheritance over David's head like a mournful pendulum every time he dared to make a decision she didn't approve of. She had spent weeks feeling faint every time the wedding was mentioned. She'd called David late at night, weeping about how my presence in the family was raising her blood pressure to dangerous levels. The paramedics arrived in minutes. As they loaded her onto the stretcher, strapping her down and putting an oxygen mask over her face, David tried to climb into the back of the ambulance with her. I have to go, she needs me, he mumbled, still not looking at me. David, I said, my voice surprisingly steady in the chaos. We are in the middle of our wedding ceremony. He finally turned, his eyes wide and wet with panic. Are you serious right now? My mother could be dying. How can you be so selfish? And just like that, he was gone, the ambulance siren wailing into the distance, leaving me to explain to a church full of people that the reception was postponed indefinitely. The kicker? I drove to the hospital 2 hours later, still in my wedding dress, to find Patricia sitting up in bed, eating cherry Jell-O and watching daytime TV. The ear doctor took me aside in the hallway. Is she okay? I asked. He sighed, looking exhausted. Physically? Yes. Her EKG is perfect. Her blood pressure is actually a little low. We ran every test. There is absolutely nothing wrong with her heart. It appears to be a severe panic attack, likely induced by stress. We gave her a mild sedative. I walked into the room. David was sitting by her bed, holding her hand, looking like he'd just survived a war. When he saw me, he put a finger to his lips. Shoo, she's resting, he whispered. Patricia opened one sleepy eye, looked at me in my ruined wedding dress, and gave the tiniest, most smug smirk I have ever seen before closing her eye again. David, I said, trying to keep the rage out of my voice. The doctor said she's fine. It was a panic attack. We can go. David looked affronted. A panic attack is serious, Elena. She was so stressed about today that her body physically shut down. This is our fault. We pushed her too hard with this wedding stuff. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was apologizing for our wedding because his mother threw a tantrum. That night, instead of a honeymoon suite, David slept in the hospital chair next to her bed, and I slept alone in the apartment we had just bought, wondering what I had just married into. We did eventually get married by a justice of the peace a month later, a quiet affair Patricia refused to attend because she was still recovering from the trauma. I thought things might settle down once the ring was on my finger and she realized I wasn't going anywhere, but I was painfully naive. David was not a husband, he was a hostage suffering from severe Stockholm syndrome, and Patricia was his captor. The financial abuse was subtle at first, then blatant. David worked in the family business, meaning Patricia was effectively his boss. If we made plans for a weekend trip, suddenly there was a crisis at the office on Friday afternoon that required David to work all weekend, unpaid, of course, because it's family. When we talked about buying new furniture, Patricia would call him, weeping about how lonely she was in her big empty house and how she couldn't afford the upkeep anymore, hinting that he needed to contribute to her expenses instead of our own home. David, terrified of her disapproval and the looming threat of being cut off, always caved. "We have to help her, Elena," he'd say, his shoulders slumped. "She sacrificed everything for me." The situations just kept escalating, becoming more bizarre and desperate the more I tried to establish boundaries. 6 months in, I planned a surprise 30th birthday party for David. I invited all his old friends, people he hadn't seen in years because Patricia didn't approve of him. It was going to be amazing. 2 hours before the party, I got a call from David. He was at his mother's house. "I can't make it tonight," he said, his voice flat. "What?" "David, everyone is coming. It's your 30th birthday. Where are you?" "Mom's basement flooded," he said. "She's hysterical. There's an inch of water near the old photo albums. I have to stay here and move boxes." I drove over there, furious. When I walked into the basement, it was bone dry. There was a dehumidifier running in the corner, and Patricia was sitting on a stool, directing David as he moved heavy boxes from one side of the room to the other for no discernible reason. "Where's the flood, Patricia?" I demanded. She clutched her pearls, gasping. "Oh, you scared me. It's dried up now, thank goodness, but it was gushing earlier. David saved everything. He's such a good son." I looked at David. "You're missing your own birthday party to move dry boxes?" He just wouldn't make eye contact. She was really scared, Elena. I couldn't just leave her to deal with it alone. I left him there. I hosted his birthday party without him, telling everyone he had a stomach flu. I felt sick lying for him, covering up his inability to be a man. The final straw, the moment that actually broke me, happened just last month. We had been trying to get pregnant for a year with no luck, and we finally had an appointment with a fertility specialist. It was a huge deal for me. I was nervous and needed David's support. We were in the car, pulling into the clinic parking lot, when his phone rang. The special ringtone for Patricia. He answered on Bluetooth. Before he could even say hello, Patricia was screaming. Screaming like she was being murdered. "David! David, help me! There's someone in the house. I hear glass breaking downstairs. Oh my God, he has a gun. David!" The color drained from David's face. He slammed the car into reverse, nearly hitting another vehicle. "Mom? Mom, hide in the closet. I'm coming. I'm calling 911. No!" She shrieked. "Don't call the police. They'll take too long. You have to come. Please, I'm going to die." "David, stop!" I yelled, grabbing his arm. "If there is an intruder, you call the police. You are not Batman. We are at the doctor's office for an appointment we waited 6 months for." He looked at me with pure venom in his eyes. "My mother is being attacked, and you care about an appointment? Are you insane? Get out of the car if you aren't coming." He actually left me in the parking lot of the fertility clinic. He sped off to save Mommy. I took an Uber home, numb. I waited. 3 hours later, he walked in the door, looking sheepish. "Well?" I said, sitting in the dark living room. "Did you catch the gunman?" He rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture I had grown to despise. It wasn't a gunman. It was a raccoon that got into the sunroom and knocked over a vase. It sounded like breaking glass to her. She was terrified, Elena. She was shaking for an hour. I had to make her tea and sit with her until she fell asleep. A raccoon, I repeated flatly. You missed the appointment that could determine if we can ever have children because your mother heard a raccoon. She didn't know it was a raccoon. She thought she was going to die. Why are you so heartless toward her? That was it. The clarity hit me like a physical blow. He wasn't protecting her, he was scared of her. He was a grown man terrified of disappointing his mommy, a man whose umbilical cord was made of steel and wrapped around his neck, choking the life out of him, and me. He would never choose me. In any situation, no matter how absurd, if Patricia snapped her fingers or faked a tear, he would come running, leaving me in the dust. Get out, I said quietly. He looked confused. What? Get out, David. Go to your mother's house. That's where you live anyway. You're just visiting here. I'm done. I want a divorce. He didn't fight for me. He didn't beg. He just got that deer-in-headlights look, packed a bag, and left. I heard from a mutual friend that he moved back into his old bedroom at Patricia's mansion the same night. Apparently, Patricia's heart condition miraculously cleared up the second I filed the papers. She tells everyone that I abandoned David because I was a gold digger who couldn't handle the pressure of a close family. Sometimes I miss the idea of who I thought David was. But then I remember him standing at the altar, watching his mother fake a medical emergency, and choosing to run to her instead of standing by me. I didn't lose a husband, I escaped a cult where the leader wore pearls and wielded guilt like a loaded weapon. And honestly, I've never felt relief like this in my life.